Welcome back to another 5 Fact Friday where we share 5 fun facts about a specific whiskey or wine topic, and hopefully you're going to learn something. Today we're talking all about the namesake of the Great Gatsby, as well as the king of all bootleggers. If you didn't know, that is George Remus. So let's dive into this. Remus was born in Germany in 1878 and then immigrated over to Illinois with his family at an early age. While over there, he obviously growing up, going through life, ends up working for his uncle's pharmacy, which I think is probably where he got his first taste of working in a pharmacy, and that's when he decided what he wanted to do with his life. So he goes to school, gets his pharmacy license, starts working as a pharmacist, but then he also goes and sits for the Illinois bar. And if you can do both lawyer, law things, and be a pharmacist, I'm not sure how difficult it was then, but if you did that now, that's like top tier. So this just proves how smart this guy is right out the get-go. And it wasn't like these were years and years apart. It was in 1889 and then 1890. So literally in about 18 months, I think is what it was, he was able to get both his pharmacy degree and his law degree. He eventually marries, and just a random fun fact, his daughter is actually the first Dorothy to appear on screen in Wizard of Oz. Just a really random fun fact. As Remus begins to work, he's working typically as a lawyer, just as for most people, showing up as their attorney, whatever it may be. And as we get closer to the 1920s and we start seeing these laws passing that are going to outlaw alcohol, people are getting caught bootlegging and things like that, and he ends up representing them, and he realizes two things. One, that they are making a ton of money, but also they're making a ton of money with a criminal's mindset, or not smart mindset. Thinking very just here instead of thinking a bigger picture. So as these laws come to pass and we get into Prohibition, he realized there was a really nice loophole. This loophole was that, one, you could buy a government bonded warehouse that already had whiskey, and then if you had the right credentials, you were able to move and sell that whiskey. He already had the credentials, he was a pharmacist, he knew all of the people who would have to write the scripts in order to get those prescription whiskeys sent out to them, and he also already had enough money where he'd be able to go buy some warehouses. Again, he's a lawyer and a pharmacist in the Chicago, Illinois area, who's making a lot of money. Once he realized this, he had to figure out where he was going to try to start his little empire. And obviously you can't do it in the Chicago area. There's already an oversaturation of gangsters there. New York's not going to work. So he decides to think a little bit harder and realizes that 80% of the government bonded warehouses in the US were within 3 miles of Cincinnati, Ohio. So that's where he goes. He ends up divorcing his wife because she didn't want to come with him, moves down to Cincinnati, and starts setting up his empire. Within this time, he also ended up purchasing, I believe it was 18 distilleries in the area, so that he'd be able to continue just making the alcohol, buying their alcohol, using that, and sending all of that stuff out. Now, he very well could have just had those warehouses and sold it legally and made a good amount of money, but that wasn't enough. He realized that these criminals were making a ton of money bootlegging, and he's like, let me get in on that real quick. So instead of just taking stuff right from the government bonded warehouses, because that's going to be very difficult, you can't just steal from a bonded warehouse, that's the whole point, it's very difficult to get into those. What's going on is that he not only has the warehouse, he had the connections, he just needed a way to transport it to the connections, so he has his own trucking company now, and what he would do is while those trucks were en route, he would hijack them, taking his own stuff and then moving it to a farm that he bought called Death Valley Farm. This is where everything would get distributed to the bootleggers, the rum runners, anything like that, and they would be able to distribute the alcohol and go make more money for him, basically. Because he was hijacking his own stuff, it wasn't a dangerous hijacking, really, and he was able to make sure things were very low violence. Not only was he smart in that essence, he also had a lot of people on his payroll. I believe at its highest, there was about 3,000 people on his payroll between the guards at the facility, or the rum runners, or the other officials, the paid off officials, the cops, anything like that, that he had on his payroll. So this man had built an empire for himself, and he was making so much money legally and illegally so that he could set up a really nice life for himself, which he did. Now, I had mentioned that Remus is the character that really inspired Great Gatsby, inspired F. Scott Fitzgerald's Great Gatsby character. So if you've seen The Great Gatsby, you know he had this giant mansion, threw all these huge parties, all of this stuff. Same thing goes for George Remus. So again, Cincinnati area, he has this massive, gorgeous mansion called the Marble Palace, and just think of it being filled with all these fancy artwork, sculptures. It had an indoor pool at the time, which, I mean, even now if you have an indoor pool, that's pretty impressive. So this man is rich. And just like Gatsby, he liked to throw parties. These parties were going to consist of just lots of music, dancers, flappers, and obviously drinking, and people loved these parties. And one specific party going into the new year, it's actually said that he gave every guy a diamond stick pin, as well as every woman he gave a car. I believe it was supposed to be a Porsche. He's also known to give children $100 bills for charity, basically just giving them that like it was a penny or something like that. This man is rich and is having just the time of his life doing his thing right now. I'd also mention that this was in the Cincinnati area, and Cincinnati, this area was a very gray area. Cincinnati, Covington, Newport, they're all kind of one little conglomerate spot right on the Ohio River, Covington and Newport being on the Kentucky side. This was actually the original Sin City. You know anything about Cincinnati? Cincinnati, Cincy, Sin City. Get it? But the actual Sin City would have been Newport. So you'd have to go over the river, and this is where just a ton of crime was very rampant. Everything you'd think of Sin City was all there in Newport. And Newport, Kentucky was actually the what's the word I want? Newport, Kentucky was basically the idea that birthed Las Vegas, what we know as Sin City now. There's a really nice spot in Newport, Kentucky, Pensive Distilling. They actually will show you a speakeasy that was there at this time. And not only that, they'll walk you through the history of really a lot of Newport and the Sin City and just kind of that era. So it's really cool. Jumping back over to Remus, obviously all good things have to come to an end. So in October of 1921, he was unfortunately arrested by some Chicago agents who had come down to raid his place, arrested him, and he was trying to pay off everyone he could, but the Chicago people weren't on his payroll, so they really didn't care. So he gets arrested, he goes to jail, and at that time he's talking to his cellmate and telling him all about all this wealth that he's got stored up and he's going to be okay when he gets out. Unfortunately, that guy was also an agent. And instead of reporting that to his boss, this guy quits his job, goes, meets Remus's wife, and starts having an affair with her, selling all of Remus's stuff, liquidating everything. And when they found out Remus was going to be getting out soon, they tried to first get him deported back to Germany, which didn't work. Then they tried to have an assassin paid to go take him out. That didn't work. The assassin just went up and told Remus, like, hey, this is what's going on. So Remus gets out. His wife wants to get a divorce. There's one day where he's riding in his car with his driver. He sees her vehicle on the road, instructs his driver to go run her off the road. That's what they go do. So near Eden Park, Cincinnati, you can actually see where this all happened. She gets run off the road, Remus gets out and guns her down right there. Now, I did say that Remus was a really good lawyer. So good that he originally, back when he was still practicing before he started his criminal enterprise, he had the first instance of the temporary insanity and was able to get that person off scot-free. Now, he runs this again, saying that he temporarily went insane, he represents himself, and sure enough, he gets off with 7 months in an insane asylum. That's it. 7 months later, he comes out, he ends up moving down and retiring basically to Covington, Kentucky, and just calling it a good day, where he got to live out the rest of his life and ended up very peacefully passing at the age of 77. This is very out of the norm, I feel like, for most people who are in the criminal enterprise like this. Like, once you get in, you're probably going to die in that criminal enterprise. He was able to get in, have everything shut down, get out, and just live out the rest of his days. So now you know the man behind the name of the brand, Remus. You know about the man who inspired F. Scott Fitzgerald's Great Gatsby. You know about the king of bootleggers, George Remus. I hope you guys enjoyed that. I hope you learned something. Have a good weekend. Cheers. Just have to show you guys. Wow. Don't know how that didn't break. Anyways, just have to show you guys this. Finally, down here in Cincinnati, Ohio, we are finally getting some snow. I know for all my northern friends, this is not snow. I don't really consider it much, but hey, it's snowing. Let me be happy.